Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. President Lee Jae Myung is signaling a bold shift in South Korea's posture towards North Korea. In a series of remarks marking 1 year since the emergency martial law crisis, he proposed reopening inter-Korean contact channels, floated the idea of national apology for past provocations, and even hinted at adjusting U.S. ROK military exercises to create room for diplomacy. But the North remains silent. Official communication lines have been shut, and instead, Pyongyang is unveiling new long-range missiles, expanding cyber operations, and strengthening ties with Russia and Laos. As it prepares for a major political cycle that may lock in its hostile two-state doctrine, the strategic landscape on the peninsula is narrowing fast. For a deeper analysis of the situation in the Korean Peninsula, we are joined by Kim Mok-yeon, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. A big welcome.
Good to see you.
And also joining us from Washington, D.C. is Patrick Cronin, Asia Pacific Security Chair at Hudson Institute. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So let's begin our discussion first with Dr. Go, with the current diplomatic freeze. So lately, President Lee Jae Myung described the inter-Korean relationship as having not even a needle's eye of communication open. So from your perspective, how dangerous is this complete disconnect between the two Koreas?
Well, clearly, the lack of communications between highly armed countries like North and South Korea is inherently very dangerous. But at the same time, you have to take into consideration the fact that South Korea is now more willing to engage in North Korea, has been sending very proactive messages to Pyongyang, saying that the previous administration's aggressive posture towards the North is no longer the case. And I think North Koreans, in fact, reciprocated some of the actions of standing down by the South, such as switching off the loudspeakers along the DMZ, which prompted North Korea to suspend their trash balloon operations, for instance. So, and this kind of reciprocal actions that have led to virtuous cycle of de-escalation, despite the fact that there was no explicit communication between the two Koreas, points towards an implicit, a tacit shared understanding that the two Koreas shouldn't escalate or provoke the other. So I think based on this mutual understanding, I believe that the lack of communication is problematic, but not as urgent or like provocative or dangerous as it used to be a couple of years ago.
Right, so especially as President Lee continues to, provide gestures of conciliation. Building on that, President Lee also proposed reopening inter-Korean communication channels as well. So given North Korea's view that only the U.S. can guarantee regime survival, how likely do you think Pyongyang is to respond to Seoul's outreach, Dr. Cronin?
Well, it's impossible to read the intentions of Kim Jong-un, but he's able to shift and pivot very quickly. The question is, in the year ahead, is he going to keep repeating the same policy of the past few years, or is he going to accept the olive branch and try to re-engage with both South Korea, the United States, maybe Japan, and others in 2026? This could resemble, say, the year 2018, the year of great symmetry. But right now, the indications are he's holding to the same policy. But there are important meetings coming up in the next couple of weeks, and maybe he'll start to indicate an opening toward shifting this policy. I think the final point here is that the United States and South Korea are inseparable, and so engagement with one necessitates engagement with the other.
Definitely. So President Lee, like I've said, also mentioned about potentials for making a national apology for, quote, past provocations against North Korea. He said it could be necessary. Dr. Go, in your view, could such a gesture actually help in reducing tensions?
Well, I think North Koreans are definitely going to welcome such gesture coming from Seoul. And I think in that sense, it could be conducive to further dialogue down the road. And I think President Lee is essentially taking like a gamble here because I mean, most of the repercussions are going to take place domestically. We know there's a very strong anti-North Korean like a segment of the society, which is going to be very critical of any move or gesture on the part of the South that can be considered to be as a concession to the North. And this will be on such instance. So President Lee will have to carefully weigh the pros and cons of providing such gesture to the North. And also, there's always this downside or possibility that North Koreans might decide not to reciprocate such gesture. They might just use it for the propaganda purposes. For instance, by arguing that what South Korean president has just said confirms what North Koreans have always been saying, which is that the source of instability in the Korean Peninsula is not North Korea, but it's the South. So, and then that's going to have, again, a cascading impact on the domestic public opinion. So I think President Lee will probably find that, I mean, the more explicit form of apology could have more downside than upside. So I think President Lee probably is going to measure the expression of, I would say, not an apology, but an recognition that there's been a mistake made very carefully. So in order to essentially limit the potential downside of such gesture.
Right. So an apology, it should be carefully thought upon as it could carry more weight than what could be expected. Now, the president also further suggested that Seoul could consider adjusting ROK-U.S. joint military exercises to create space for diplomacy. Dr. Cronin, from a strategic deterrence standpoint, can these exercises be restructured without compromising Allied readiness?
Well, peace requires alliance readiness, and there is no substitute for realistic combat training. So there are real constraints on how far you can restructure these exercises to accommodate diplomacy. That being said, it is at the discretion of the leaders of South Korea and the United States to make tactical adjustments in timing, scale, to support diplomacy if there are productive talks emerging. We also must bear in mind that North Korea's strategic goal, an enduring one, is to weaken the alliance. So we shouldn't make a concession on a serious issue as weakening our readiness in order to hope that talks lead to some productive sort of result. We need to see some sincerity on the part of North Korea in this process early on as well.
Definitely. So it's really a tough balance between flexibility and deterrence. Meanwhile, North Korea, on the other side, continues to modernize its Air Force, unveiling a Taurus-like air-to-ground missile and also upgrading early warning capabilities as well. Dr. Go, what does this actually tell us about Pyongyang's evolving threat calculus and military priorities?
Well, North Korea has embarked on this long-term plan to enhance its the conventional military capabilities in addition to the nuclear capability that they already possess. And in a way, I think Kim Jong-un's ambition or aspiration is to be able to match South Korea's capability as equals. So South Korea had invested quite a bit in modernizing its long-range strike capabilities, especially with an emphasis on precision strike capability. And I believe North Korea had some sort of envy, so to speak, and therefore they are planning to catch up with the South in this domain. But having said that, I think it's going to be quite challenging for North Korea to do so. It takes a very advanced industrial and technological capability, in addition to having a vast economic resources that North Korea doesn't possess, in order to build a precision strike capability that South Korea possesses already. So I think it's one of the North Korea's way to, not on way, but North Korea's expression of ambitions and also their willingness to challenge South Korea's conventional superiority. So it's worrisome that North Koreans are engaged in this path of precision strike capability development. But on the other hand, I believe it's going to take quite a while for North Korea to catch up with the South, if ever.
So it could take a while to catch up with South Korea's standards. But the developments definitely are very concerning indeed. So this is definitely backed by cooperation between North Korea and Russia, which is growing lately. Dr. Cronin, what are the implications for the ROK-U.S. alliance and the sanctions regime?
Well, I'm not sure that sanctions really matter to Russia or even to China in terms of enforcing them on North Korea. So that regime has already been severely weakened. I'm much more concerned with the fact that the Russian-North Korean cooperation is deepening. The Russians and the North Koreans have a longer-term plan, and they are going to persist in building up the conventional capabilities of North Korea. That will complement the nuclear asymmetry that exists on the peninsula, and it may open up in a future crisis, let's say over Taiwan in 2027 perhaps, the possibility for multi-crises in the region. So North Korea doesn't have to catch South Korea's capabilities. It just has to align itself with other major powers' potential moves, Russia's, China's, and then back it up by more political will than South Korea or the United States. So this is a very dangerous, serious national security element that must be watched by professionals. But none of that should take away from the desire for diplomacy, because I think there's a great sincerity on the part of Seoul and Washington to try to open up talks and ease pressures.
Thank you for pointing up on North Korea's ultimate goals. Now, in that diplomatic context, then North Korea has also sent high-level messages to Laos, showcasing ties with traditional socialist allies. Dr. Go, do you see this as a symbolic diplomacy or part of a broader anti-Western alignment strategy from North Korea?
Yeah, it's part of North Korea's broader campaign to engage its traditional allies and partners around the world. So when it comes to North Korea's foreign policy actions, this seems to follow a cycle. So there's a cycle of retrenchment before, especially before the COVID years in the 2020. North Korea was subject to very heavy sanctions. So North Korea had retrenched itself diplomatically, and especially in the aftermath of the failed talks between North Korea and the United States in Hanoi in 2019. And then they went through these dark years of the COVID with self-isolation and also as disengagement from the South. And now I think North Korea is engaging more with the outside world, and they're in the diplomatic phase of expansion. And we have seen North Korea normalizing relations, not normalizing, but restoring relations and communications with China, Russia, obviously, but also with some European countries. There are now European ambassadors in Pyongyang, like the Swedish ambassador has been in Pyongyang since last year. So, and I think having completed the phase of restoring diplomatic relations with the European countries, now I believe North Korea is engaged in restoring relations with the former allies and partners elsewhere, especially in the global South. And I think, also I think North Korea feels confident in doing so because they are experiencing that they are more accepted in the global stage. We have seen this in the Victory Day parade in Beijing in September, where Kim Jong-un stood alongside President Xi Jinping as well as Vladimir Putin of Russia. So I think this phase of expansion in diplomatic sense, I think it's going to persist for a while.
So alongside this diplomatic strategy from North Korea, we're also concerned about its developments in terms of cyberspace, Dr. Go. The Kim Jong-rat malware campaign, disguised as South Korean tax documents, actually shows evolving North Korean cyber tactics as well. What additional steps should Seoul and its allies actually take to harden cyber defenses against these threats?
Well, North Korean cyber threats it's not news. It's been going on for decades now, and South Korea has prepared itself against North Korea cyber attacks. So has preparations already in place, and especially one not noteworthy development is South Korea's alliance with the United States in cyberspace. These are agreements and joint exercises that are being carried out since the previous U.S. administration of President Biden. But the two sides, South Korea and the United States, have agreed that they're going to take a more proactive approach when it comes to fending off cyber threats coming from North Korea and elsewhere. I think North Korea still represents a more of a traditional threat vector. North Korea tends to go after soft targets such as cryptocurrency exchanges and other financial institutions that have a lot of economic, I'll say, gains to be made by the North Korean hackers, but at the same time, their cyber defenses are relatively low level. And in that sense, I think the South Korea and the United States have made a good preparation for such attacks. But I think South Korea should be prepared against a much more serious threat actors that are already penetrating or with what we thought to be well defended systems, such as our telecommunication companies, as well as defense industry companies that have been penetrated by foreign actors already. And in that sense, I think South Korea should work more and more closely with our key allies, United States obviously, but also other important cyber powerhouses, especially in the NATO countries, to fend off these growing threats.
Right, definitely. So close attention would definitely be necessary in that front. Now, North Korea is actually entering a critical domestic cycle with the Party Congress and Supreme People's Assembly that's coming up. Dr. Cronin, what signals are you watching for that could indicate any changes in Pyongyang's internal or external direction?
Well, I'm especially interested in indications of change on the diplomacy, on the military priorities, and on possible economic reforms that might be forthcoming in the next year or the next 5 years. I'm looking at two different reference points. One of them is the Chinese Fourth Plenum as they prepare for their 15 five-year plan. It's worth noting just how much Xi Jinping has doubled down on high technology and economic growth. And you can say that of every Asian power, except for North Korea. Will North Korea finally sort of start to adjust and think about technological change and economic change, or will it just continue to focus more on its military priorities? The second contrast is the 2021 Eighth Party Congress, where Kim Jong-un articulated a very robust, ambitious set of military objectives. He also talked about some very impressive economic objectives that were never realized. So again, I'm looking for contrast to the 2021 sort of list that he provided. And finally, are there going to be any personnel changes? Are there any HR issues here that we may start to see? Obviously, a lot of attention has been focused on his daughter, but at the high levels, it'll be interesting to see if there are any other changes around Kim Jong-un as he prepares for what could be a year of a shift toward more diplomacy or a doubling down on conventional military capabilities and closer relations with both China and Russia.
So this political season could shape what's to come internally and externally as well. Now, then, Dr. Cronin, finally, there's also growing talk that Pyongyang may codify its hostile two-state doctrine in its constitution or party rules. So if this actually happens, what kind of long-term impact would this have on inter-Korean relations and the future of our unification policy?
Well, history points toward unification. I mean, there's from the foundational sort of stories about the Korean people to the language to centuries of being unified, history points toward unification. But Kim Jong-un and the Kim regime points in the opposite direction. And if they codify a two-state, hostile state policy in their constitution, it just puts another barrier into short-term unification dreams and hopes. But I think those barriers will eventually fall. We just don't know when.
Okay, let's hope we could see some developments on that front moving forward. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Cronin. And of course, Dr. Go, we really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.